The coffee shop on Fifth Avenue was the kind of place where a single cappuccino cost more than my hourly wage. I wiped down the marble countertop for the third time that hour, watching the autumn rain streak down the floor-to-ceiling windows. New York City always looked different from inside these glass towers, cleaner, more romantic, like it belonged in a movie rather than real life. Maya, table 7 needs clearing, called Derek, my manager, barely looking up from his phone. I grabbed the tray and headed toward the corner booth, where a half-eaten croissant and an untouched latte sat abandoned. The lunch rush had finally died down, leaving only a handful of customers scattered throughout the cafe. My feet ached in my worn sneakers, and I had 4 more hours before my shift ended. Then I'd head to my night job at the grocery store in Brooklyn, where I'd stand at a register until midnight, scanning items and forcing smiles at tired shoppers. This was my life at 26. 2 jobs, a cramped studio apartment in Bushwick that I shared with 2 roommates, and student loan debt that felt like a mountain I'd never climb. My journalism degree hung on the wall next to my bed, an expensive piece of paper that had promised opportunities but delivered only rejection emails from every publication in the city. "Excuse me." I turned to find a man in an impeccable charcoal suit standing behind me. He was probably in his early 30s, with sharp features, dark hair touched with silver at the temples, and eyes the color of steel. Everything about him screamed wealth, from his Italian leather shoes to the watch on his wrist that probably cost more than I made in a year. "Yes, sir. Can I help you?" I asked, straightening my apron. "Are you Maya Chen?" I froze, my mind racing through possibilities. Had I done something wrong? Was this about the complaint from last week when I'd accidentally spilled water on that banker's laptop? I. Yes. "How did you know my name?" He gestured to my name tag, and I felt my cheeks flush. "Of course. My name is Alexander Whitmore. I have a business proposition for you. Do you have a moment to talk?" "I'm working, Mr. Whitmore." "I can't really." "I'll make it worth your while. $100 for 15 minutes of your time." I blinked. $100 was groceries for 2 weeks. It was the electricity bill I'd been putting off. It was breathing room. "Let me ask my manager," I said, already moving toward Derek. 5 minutes later, I sat across from Alexander Whitmore in the corner booth, my hands folded on the table, trying not to look as nervous as I felt. "Miss Chen, I'm going to be direct with you because I don't have much time," he began, his voice smooth and businesslike. "I need someone to pose as my wife for approximately 12 hours. Tomorrow. In exchange, I'm prepared to offer you $50,000. I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" $50,000. Cash. For 1 day of your time. Is this some kind of joke? Did Derek put you up to this? I looked around for hidden cameras. Alexander pulled out his wallet and placed a business card on the table. It was heavy cardstock, embossed with gold lettering. Alexander Whitmore, CEO, Whitmore Industries. "I assure you, this is entirely legitimate. I have a crucial meeting tomorrow with potential investors from Singapore. They're very traditional, very family-oriented. They've made it clear they prefer to do business with married men. They believe it shows stability and commitment. My assistant was supposed to help me with this, but she quit yesterday after I refused to give her a raise she didn't deserve. So you need a fake wife. For 1 day. Tomorrow, from 8 in the morning until 8 in the evening. You'll attend a brunch meeting, a tour of my company headquarters, and a dinner. You'll wear a ring, smile, play the part of a devoted spouse. That's all." I studied his face, looking for signs of deception. Why me? Why not hire an actress or, I don't know, ask a friend? I don't have time to go through an agency, and involving a friend would complicate things. I need someone who has no connection to my world, someone who can be professional and discreet. My investigator did a background check on several service workers and establishments I frequent. You came highly recommended. Your manager says you're reliable, intelligent, and you need the money. The invasion of privacy should have angered me, but the mention of $50,000 kept echoing in my head. That was enough to pay off a huge chunk of my student loans. Enough to quit one of my jobs. Enough to actually save something for the future. There's nothing illegal about this, is there? Nothing illegal. You'll sign a non-disclosure agreement and a contract outlining the terms. My lawyer will be present to ensure everything is above board. And what exactly would I have to do? What's the story? Alexander leaned back, his expression neutral. "We'll say we've been married for 2 years. We met at a charity gala. You were covering it for a small publication. We fell in love, married quietly because I value privacy. You're a freelance writer working on a novel. Keep the details vague. The investors won't ask too many personal questions. What if I mess up? What if they figure out it's fake? Then I don't get the investment, and you still get paid. That's in the contract, payment regardless of outcome, provided you fulfill your obligations and maintain confidentiality. I looked out the window at the rain at the city that had chewed me up since I'd arrived 5 years ago. My mother's voice echoed in my head, warning me about things that seemed too good to be true. But desperation has a way of drowning out wisdom. I'll need to see the contract first. Alexander smiled for the first time, a small, satisfied curve of his lips. My lawyer is waiting in a car outside. Shall we? The contract. The black Mercedes felt like a spaceship compared to the subway cars I was used to. Leather seats, soft music, and that new car smell that probably came from the same place as rich people's confidence. Alexander's lawyer, a woman named Patricia Carlyle with silver hair and severe glasses, sat across from us with a laptop balanced on her knees. Miss Chen, I've prepared a standard contract for personal services, Patricia said, her tone brisk and professional. Let me walk you through the key points. She handed me a tablet displaying a document that looked like it had more words than my college thesis. Section 1 outlines the scope of services. You agree to pose as Mr. Whitmore's spouse for a period not to exceed 12 hours on November 15th. Section 2 covers compensation, $50,000, to be paid via wire transfer immediately following the completion of services. Section 3 is the non-disclosure agreement. You cannot discuss this arrangement with anyone ever. Violation results in legal action and a penalty of $500,000. My mouth went dry. $500,000. It's standard for this type of agreement, Patricia assured me. We need to protect Mr. Whitmore's business interests and reputation. However, as long as you never speak about this arrangement, it's not something you need to worry about. What about Section 4? I asked, scrolling down. That covers acceptable behavior and boundaries. No photographs together beyond what the investors might take for their own records. No social media posts. No physical intimacy beyond what might be expected in public, holding hands, a touch on the arm, that sort of thing. Mr. Whitmore has also specified that all interactions will remain professional and respectful. I glanced at Alexander, who was checking his phone, apparently bored by the whole proceeding. What if someone recognizes me later? What if one of these investors comes back to New York and sees me at the coffee shop? Patricia nodded approvingly. Good question. We've included a clause for that scenario. If you're recognized, you'll say the marriage didn't work out, but you prefer not to discuss it. Keep it brief and polite. The NDA still applies. I read through the contract twice, my journalism degree finally proving useful as I parsed the legal language. It was surprisingly straightforward. No hidden clauses about weird demands or creepy requirements. Just one day of pretending, and enough money to change my life. I need to make a phone call before I sign, I said. Alexander looked up. To whom? My roommate. I need to tell her I won't be home tonight. I'll need time to prepare for this, won't I? To learn about you, to get the story straight. You can call her. But remember, you cannot tell her the truth. Not now, not ever. I stepped out of the car into the rain, dialing Sarah's number with shaking hands. Maya? Why are you calling? Are you okay? Sarah answered on the second ring, concern in her voice. I'm fine. Listen, something came up. I got offered a catering job for tomorrow. Really good money. But I need to prep tonight, and I'll be gone all day tomorrow. Can you cover my shift at the grocery store? Yeah, sure. How much are we talking? I hesitated. Enough that I might be able to quit the grocery store permanently. Sarah whistled. Damn. Must be some fancy party. Be safe, okay? I will. Thanks, Sarah. I ended the call and climbed back into the Mercedes. Alexander and Patricia were waiting patiently. Ready? Patricia asked. I picked up the stylus and signed my name on the electronic document. Maya Chen. My signature looked small and uncertain on the screen. Excellent, Patricia said, pressing a few buttons. You'll receive a copy via email. Now, Mr. Whitmore has arranged for you to stay at his residence tonight. His staff will brief you on everything you need to know, and you'll have access to appropriate clothing and styling. Stay at his residence? That wasn't mentioned. Alexander pocketed his phone. It's more efficient. My penthouse has a guest suite. You'll have complete privacy, but we'll need the evening to go over our story, practice interactions, and ensure you're properly prepared. Unless you'd prefer to risk appearing unprepared tomorrow, he had a point. I couldn't show up to meet Singapore investors looking like I'd just rolled out of my Bushwick apartment. Fine, but I need to go home first and get some things. We don't have time, Alexander said. Anything you need will be provided. The finality in his tone reminded me that this wasn't a partnership. It was a transaction. I was being paid to play a role, and Alexander Whitmore was directing the show. The penthouse. Alexander's penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a building in Tribeca. The elevator required a key card to access, and when the doors opened, I stepped directly into a foyer that was bigger than my entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Manhattan, the city lights twinkling like fallen stars against the darkening sky. This way, Alexander said, leading me through a living room that looked like it belonged in an architecture magazine. Everything was clean lines and expensive materials, marble, steel, glass. There was no clutter, no personal touches, nothing that suggested an actual human lived here. A woman in her 50s appeared from a hallway, wearing a crisp blouse and slacks. Mr. Whitmore, welcome home. Margaret, this is Maya Chen. She's our guest for the evening. Please show her to the guest suite and ensure she has everything she needs. Margaret's expression remained neutral, but I caught a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. Of course, sir. Miss Chen, if you'll follow me. The guest suite was larger than some studio apartments I'd looked at when I first moved to New York. King-size bed, ensuite bathroom with a soaking tub, a walk-in closet that was currently empty except for plush robes and slippers. Dinner will be served at 7, Margaret informed me. Mr. Whitmore prefers to dine in the main room. Is there anything specific you'd like prepared? No, whatever is fine. Thank you. She nodded and left me alone. I sat on the edge of the bed, my reflection staring back at me from a mirror across the room. I looked small and out of place, a sketch in a museum full of masterpieces. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Meet me in the study in 30 minutes. Second door on the left from the living room. I spent the next half hour exploring the bathroom, which had more amenities than a spa. There were unopened toiletries in the cabinets, high-end brands I'd only seen in department stores. I took a quick shower, washing away the coffee shop smell, and changed into the robe Margaret had left out. 28 minutes later, I found the study. Alexander sat behind a massive desk, papers spread before him. He changed into casual clothes, dark jeans and a sweater that probably cost what I made in a month, and somehow looked even more intimidating without the suit. Sit, he said, gesturing to a chair across from him. I sat. We need to establish our story in detail. The investors, MR, and Mrs. Tan, are very observant. Inconsistencies will raise red flags. He pushed a folder toward me. This is everything you need to know about me. Background, business ventures, family history, preferences. Memorize it. I opened the folder. Inside was what amounted to a dossier on Alexander Whitmore's life. Born in Boston to Richard and Elizabeth Whitmore. One younger sister, Caroline, currently living in London. Graduated from Harvard with degrees in economics and business. Took over Whitmore Industries at 28 when his father retired. Company value, $2.3 billion. Hobbies, sailing, collecting rare books, wine tasting. This reads like a dating profile for billionaires, I muttered. It's your homework. Now, tell me about yourself. The truth, not what you'll say tomorrow. I looked up, surprised. Why does that matter? Because I need to know who I'm working with, and because portions of the truth make lies more convincing. Fair point. I closed the folder and met his gaze. Maya Lin Chen, 26, born in San Francisco to immigrant parents from Taiwan. My dad's a retired engineer. My mom teaches piano. I have one younger brother, Daniel, who's in medical school, the successful child. I couldn't keep the bitterness entirely out of my voice. I graduated from NYU with a journalism degree 4 years ago. Thought I'd be the next great investigative reporter. Instead, I'm serving coffee and scanning groceries while my loans accumulate interest. Why journalism? I wanted to tell stories that mattered. Expose corruption. Give voice to the voiceless. All that idealistic nonsense they sell you in college. It's not nonsense. I shrugged. Doesn't matter. There are 1,000 journalism graduates for every job opening. I'm just another resume in the pile. Alexander studied me with those steel gray eyes. Tomorrow, you're Maya Whitmore, freelance writer. You met me 2 years ago at the Children's Hospital Charity Gala in 2024. I was there representing my company. You were writing a piece for the New York Observer. We started talking about the importance of arts funding in public schools. I asked you to dinner. 6 months later, I proposed at the top of the Empire State Building. That's pretty cliche. Mrs. Tan loves romantic cliches. She cried when I told her the story last month. You've been planning this for a while. I've been planning various scenarios for business contingencies. This is just one of them. The coldness of that statement settled over me. This was all just business to him. My financial desperation, his fake marriage, the elaborate charade. Just another deal to close. What about your real life? I asked. Do you actually date anyone? Won't they be upset about this? My personal life is none of your concern. It is if your girlfriend shows up tomorrow and blows our cover. His jaw tightened. I'm not seeing anyone. I don't have time for relationships. Whitmore Industries requires constant attention. That sounds lonely. It's efficient, he corrected. Now, let's go over how we'll interact tomorrow. The Tans are physically affectionate with each other. They'll expect to see similar comfort between us. He stood and walked around the desk. Stand up. I did, my heart rate picking up as he approached. Give me your hand. I extended my hand, and he took it in his. His skin was warm, his grip firm, but not aggressive. He interlaced our fingers, the gesture surprisingly intimate. This is acceptable, he said clinically. Also this, he released my hand and placed his palm on the small of my back, the touch light but present. And this, he lifted his hand to brush an imaginary strand of hair from my face. My breath caught. Up close, I could see flecks of blue in his gray eyes, could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle. You need to look comfortable with this, he said. Not like I'm a stranger touching you. You are a stranger touching me. For the next 18 hours, I'm your husband of 2 years. I like it. I forced myself to relax, to lean slightly into his touch. Better? Better. He stepped back, the moment broken. We'll practice more at dinner. Margaret's preparing your favorites, according to the story. Which are? Salmon, asparagus, wild rice. You're allergic to shellfish and you don't eat red meat. You prefer white wine, specifically Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand. I'm not actually allergic to shellfish. Tomorrow you are. It's easier to remember restrictions than preferences. Dress rehearsal. Dinner was served in a dining room that could have seated 20. Crystal chandeliers, oil paintings, a table so polished I could see my reflection in it. Alexander sat at the head, and I was placed to his right, close enough to seem intimate, far enough to maintain propriety. Margaret served the meal with quiet efficiency, and I tried not to gawk at the portions. This was more food than I usually ate in 2 days. Tell me about your novel, Alexander said, cutting into his salmon. What novel? The one you're supposedly writing. Mrs. Tan will ask about it. Right. My fictional career. What should I say? Something literary but accessible. A story about immigrant families in America, perhaps. That's authentic enough to your background to be convincing. I nodded, making mental notes. And what do I say about your work? That I'm brilliant but workaholic. That you wish I'd take more vacations, but you understand my commitment to the company and the thousands of people it employs. You're proud of me but also push me to maintain work-life balance. Do you need pushing for work-life balance? Constantly, he admitted. Though usually from my sister, not a wife. Tell me about Caroline. His expression softened slightly, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from him. She's 30, lives in London, works for an art gallery. She's everything I'm not, spontaneous, creative, optimistic. She calls me twice a week to remind me I'm becoming a robot. Are you? Some days it feels that way. I took a sip of the Sauvignon Blanc, which was admittedly delicious. Can I ask you something? That's generally how conversations work. Why is this investment so important? You're already rich. Can't you finance whatever project this is yourself? Alexander set down his fork, his business mask sliding back into place. Whitmore Industries is expanding into sustainable technology, specifically affordable solar solutions for developing nations. The Tans have connections throughout Southeast Asia and the capital to help us scale rapidly. This isn't about my personal wealth. It's about building something that matters. The passion in his voice surprised me. For a moment, he sounded less like a calculating CEO and more like someone who actually cared about making a difference. That's actually impressive, I said. Don't sound so shocked. I just figured you were in it for the money. Money is a tool, not a goal. My father taught me that. He paused. He also taught me that perception shapes reality in business. The Tans perceive married men as more stable, so I need to appear married. It's that simple. Except it's not simple. It's fraud. It's theater. Every business meeting is a performance. I'm just being more literal about it. Margaret cleared our plates and brought dessert, some kind of elaborate chocolate thing that probably had a French name. After dinner, we'll go through your wardrobe for tomorrow, Alexander said. My stylist dropped off several options this afternoon. You have a stylist? Everyone in my position has a stylist. Public perception, remember? After we finished eating, he led me to a room I hadn't seen yet, a massive closet apparently designated for tomorrow's costume. Dresses hung in garment bags, shoes lined the shelves, jewelry sparkled in velvet boxes. Try this one first, Alexander said, pulling out a navy blue dress with a modest neckline and elegant cut. I took it into the bathroom and changed, staring at myself in the mirror. The dress fit perfectly, hugging my curves without being inappropriate. With the right shoes and accessories, I could almost pass for someone who belonged in Alexander's world. When I emerged, he was sitting in an armchair, scrolling through his phone. He looked up and his eyes widened slightly, just a fraction, but enough for me to notice. That works, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Try the gray one next. We went through 6 dresses before settling on a deep burgundy sheath dress for the dinner and a cream-colored skirt suit for the brunch. Alexander had opinions on everything: heel height, jewelry, even my hairstyle. You'll need to wear your hair down tomorrow morning, he instructed. Up for dinner. Mrs. Tan is traditional. She'll expect a certain polished presentation. Anything else? Should I practice my curtsy? He almost smiled. Don't curtsy. Just be poised, attentive, and remember the story. You're a smart woman who fell in love with an ambitious man. You support his work while maintaining your own identity. You're partners, not owner and trophy. Is that how you'd want a real marriage to be? The question seemed to catch him off guard. I haven't thought about it. Never? My father's marriage to my mother was a business arrangement that became affectionate over time. It worked well for them. If I were to marry for real, I'd approach it the same way: compatible goals, mutual respect, clear expectations. That sounds incredibly unromantic. Romance is temporary. Partnership is sustainable. I thought about my parents, who'd been married for 32 years and still held hands during movies. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. Perhaps not, he conceded. But in my experience, when people lead with romance, they end up disappointed. Speaking from experience, his expression closed off. We should go over the timeline for tomorrow. Early night. The car picks us up at 7:30. Subject changed. Message received. The morning after. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, my brain spun through scenarios where I'd mess up, say the wrong thing, accidentally call Alexander Mr. Whitmore instead of darling, or whatever term of endearment fake wives used. At 6 a.m., I gave up and took a long bath, trying to calm my nerves. Margaret appeared at 7 with coffee and croissants, along with the stylist, a thin woman named Petra who descended on me with the focus of a general preparing for battle. 2 hours later, I didn't recognize myself in the mirror. My hair fell in soft waves, my makeup was subtle but flawless, and the cream skirt suit made me look like I belonged in a boardroom rather than behind a coffee counter. The engagement ring and wedding band Alexander had given me the night before, both real diamonds, borrowed from a jeweler friend, caught the light whenever I moved. You look perfect, Petra declared. Remember, confidence is key. You belong in these spaces. Except I didn't, and we all knew it. Alexander was waiting in the living room, looking devastating in a charcoal 3-piece suit. He'd been handsome before, but cleaned up and professional. He was almost intimidating. His eyes swept over me appraisingly. Good. You look like yourself, but elevated. I feel like I'm wearing a costume. You are. The difference is you need to believe in the character. He handed me a leather portfolio. Your backstory condensed. Review it in the car. The Mercedes was waiting downstairs. As we settled into the back seat, Alexander's demeanor shifted. He reached over and took my hand, his thumb brushing across my knuckles. I tensed. Relax, he murmured. The driver works for the Tans. The performance starts now. Right. I forced my shoulders down, interlaced my fingers with his. His hand was warm, steady, and having it wrapped around mine was oddly comforting. Nervous? He asked, just loud enough for the driver to hear. A little, I admitted. That, at least, was true. You'll be wonderful. You always are. The way he said it, so confident, so natural, made me wonder how many times he'd acted in his life. Maybe he was right. Maybe all of business was just sophisticated theater. The Peninsula Hotel rose before us, all glass and grandeur. Alexander helped me out of the car, his hand on my elbow, and we walked into the lobby like we owned the place. The Tans were waiting in a private dining room. Mr. Tan was in his 60s, distinguished and formal in a perfectly tailored suit. Mrs. Tan was younger, perhaps 50, with kind eyes and an elegant presence. Alexander, Mr. Tan stood to shake hands. And this must be Maya. We've heard so much about you. All good things, I hope, I said, smiling as I shook his hand. Mrs. Tan pulled me into an unexpected hug. You're even lovelier than the photos. And that suits Chanel. Actually, I caught Alexander's warning glance. Yes. Alexander has excellent taste. I told her she looked beautiful, Alexander said, slipping his arm around my waist. But she never believes me. The casual intimacy of the gesture, the way he pulled me close like he'd done it 1,000 times, would have felt invasive if I hadn't been prepared for it. Instead, I leaned into him slightly, playing my part. Brunch was a minefield of small talk and careful navigation. Mrs. Tan asked about our wedding, intimate ceremony in the Hamptons, only close family, our honeymoon, 2 weeks in Tuscany, and how we managed with Alexander's demanding schedule. It's not always easy, I admitted, which was probably the most honest thing I'd say all day. But we make it work. Alexander's work is important. He's changing lives with sustainable technology. I'd rather have him pursuing his passion than stuck in a job he hates. Mrs. Tan beamed. That's beautiful. So many young couples today don't understand sacrifice for the greater good. Mr. Tan turned to Alexander. You chose well, my friend. A woman who understands vision and purpose, that's rare. If only they knew I was being paid for this understanding. The conversation shifted to business, and I found myself genuinely interested as Alexander and Mr. Tan discussed solar panel efficiency and distribution networks. Alexander was in his element, passionate and articulate, painting a picture of renewable energy transforming communities. What do you think, Maya? Mr. Tan suddenly asked. From a writer's perspective, how would you tell this story to the public? All eyes turned to me. Alexander's hand tightened slightly on mine, encouragement or warning, I couldn't tell. I took a breath. I think people connect with human stories, not statistics. Show them a village in Indonesia where children can study after dark because of solar lamps. Show them a grandmother who can refrigerate medicine for the first time. Make it personal, make it real. The technology is impressive, but the impact on real lives, that's what will resonate. Mr. Tan nodded slowly. Insightful. You have a gift for narrative. Mrs. Tan touched my arm. You must write the company's story someday. I glanced at Alexander, who was watching me with an unreadable expression. I'd be honored. I lied smoothly. After brunch, we toured Whitmore Industries headquarters. The building was sleek and modern, filled with ambitious young people who called Alexander Mr. Whitmore with a mix of respect and fear. He was different here, more commanding, more distant. The easy warmth he'd shown at brunch evaporated, replaced by a cool authority. But whenever the Tans were watching, he transformed back into the attentive husband. A hand on my back guiding me through doorways. A whispered explanation of technical details. Small touches that suggested comfort and intimacy. By the time we returned to the penthouse for a break before dinner, I was exhausted from maintaining the facade. Alexander poured himself a scotch and loosened his tie. You did well, he said. Mrs. Tan is already planning our joint vacation to their estate in Singapore. That's not happening. Of course not. But she's convinced we're genuine, which is what matters. He studied me over his glass. A comment about human stories, you meant it. Just because I'm playing a part doesn't mean I can't have real opinions. No, I mean you actually see the work that way. not as profit margins and efficiency metrics, but as human impact. I shrugged, uncomfortable with his scrutiny. Isn't that the point? It should be. But most people in my world forget that somewhere along the way. The dinner at Persa required me to change into the burgundy dress. Petra had left it hanging in the guest suite with a note about which shoes and jewelry to wear. I stared at myself in the mirror, barely recognizing the sophisticated woman looking back. There was a knock at the door. Come in, I called. Alexander entered, now wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than my car, if I owned a car. He stopped short when he saw me. Is something wrong? I asked, suddenly self-conscious. No. You look perfect. But there was something in his voice, a roughness that hadn't been there before. Are you all right? He cleared his throat. I got news during the break. Mr. Tan is ready to commit to the investment. Pending tonight's dinner going well, we'll sign papers tomorrow. That's great. That's what you wanted, right? Yes. But he didn't look entirely happy about it. Maya, I want to thank you. You've played this part better than I could have hoped. You're a natural. I'm a good liar, you mean? No. You're a good adapter. There's a difference. He held out his hand. Shall we? The restaurant was everything you'd expect from a 3-Michelin-star establishment. Hushed tones, immaculate service, prices that would make normal people weep. The Tans were already seated when we arrived. Maya. Alexander. Mrs. Tan stood to embrace us both. Don't you both look stunning? Marriage suits you. If only she knew how temporary this particular marriage was. Dinner was a parade of tiny, artistic courses that were probably delicious but barely registered through my nervousness. Mr. Tan and Alexander discussed contract details and timelines, while Mrs. Tan asked me about my novel. It's about 3 generations of women in an immigrant family. I improvised, drawing from stories my grandmother had told me. How they navigate between their heritage and American identity, what they sacrifice and what they preserve. Oh, that sounds wonderful. You must let me know when it's published. Of course, I lied, hating how easy the deception was becoming. And children? Mrs. Tan asked suddenly. Are you two planning a family? I nearly choked on my wine. Alexander's hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. Eventually, he said smoothly. Right now, we're both focused on our careers. But yes, we want children someday. Don't wait too long, Mrs. Tan advised. I see so many young couples delaying, and then they regret it. We won't, I assured her, playing with the fake wedding band on my finger. We've talked about it. Maybe in another year or two. The lie tasted bitter. A year or two from now, I'd be back in my tiny apartment, serving coffee, and Alexander would probably be married to someone from his actual social circle, some elegant socialite or brilliant entrepreneur who belonged in his world. After dinner, we walked the Tans to their car. Mrs. Tan hugged me tightly. You're a treasure, Maya. Take care of our Alexander. I will, I promised, the words hollow in my mouth. As their car pulled away, Alexander's posture shifted. The warm husband disappeared, replaced by the businessman. It's done, he said quietly. Tan will sign tomorrow. You fulfilled your contract. So I can go. After the wire transfer processes. Tomorrow afternoon at the latest. He paused. I'll have Margaret pack some of the clothes for you. You should keep them. I don't need your charity. It's not charity. You earned them. He looked out at the city lights. You earned all of it. You were remarkable today. I was a good actress. No. You were genuine. That's what sold it. Every smile, every laugh, every thoughtful comment. Those were real parts of you. You just directed them toward a fictional narrative. Maybe he was right. Maybe the best lies were the ones wrapped in truth. We rode back to the penthouse in silence. The city blurred past the window, millions of people living their real lives while I was finishing my performance. Back in the penthouse, Alexander poured 2 glasses of scotch and handed me one. To successful deceptions, he said, raising his glass. To necessary fictions, I counted. We drank. The scotch burned going down, warming me from the inside. Can I ask you something? I said. Why didn't you just tell the Tans the truth? That you're not married but you're still a good businessman? Because in their world, those 2 things are connected. Traditional values, family structure, it all signals stability and commitment. Right or wrong, that's their reality. But you're lying to them. I'm giving them what they need to feel confident in the investment. The solar technology will work whether I'm married or not. The good we'll do will be real. Does it matter how we got there? I think it does. You're idealistic. And you're pragmatic. Guess that's why one of us is a billionaire and the other serves coffee. He flinched slightly at that. Maya, it's fine. I'm not judging you. I took your money, didn't I? I played my part. I'm just as complicit in the lie. You had reasons. Good reasons. So did you. Doesn't make either of us noble. We stood there in the dim light of the penthouse, two strangers who'd pretended to love each other for 12 hours, now faced with the uncomfortable reality of our transaction. For what it's worth, Alexander said quietly, if I were actually looking for a wife, you'd be exactly the kind of person I'd want. My heart did something complicated in my chest. Don't. Don't what? Don't try to make this more than it was. We had a deal. Tomorrow I get paid, I leave, and we never see each other again. Let's not complicate it with fake sentiments. What if they're not fake? I set down my glass. Good night, Alexander. I left him standing there and retreated to the guest suite, my heart pounding. This was dangerous territory, mixing fiction and feeling, blurring the lines between performance and reality. I changed out of the designer dress and into my own clothes from yesterday. In the morning, I'd go back to my real life, and all of this would become just a strange story I could never tell anyone. Except as I lay in the impossibly soft bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't stop replaying the day. The way Alexander had looked at me during dinner. The ease of our staged intimacy. The moments when the pretending had felt dangerously real. $50,000. That's what mattered. Not the flutter in my stomach when he'd called me remarkable. Not the warmth of his hand in mine. Not the way he defended his work with passion instead of pride. Just the money. Just the transaction. I repeated it to myself like a mantra until I finally fell asleep. The morning after, I woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and a moment of disorientation. This wasn't my cramped bedroom in Bushwick. This was a palace, and for one more morning, I was the princess. Except princesses didn't sell themselves for $50,000. There was a soft knock at the door, and Margaret entered with coffee and breakfast on a tray. Good morning, Miss Chen. Mr. Whitmore asked me to let you know the wire transfer has been processed. You should see the funds in your account within the hour. Thank you. I checked my phone. No notifications yet, but it was early. Mr. Whitmore has already left for the office, Margaret continued. But he left this for you. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a handwritten note on heavy cardstock. Maya, thank you again for your professionalism. I've included a reference letter for your journalism career. You can adjust the details as needed. The clothes are yours, as discussed. I wish you the best in your future endeavors. Alexander. Tucked behind the note was a formal letter on Whitmore Industries letterhead, describing Maya Chen's excellent work as a freelance consultant on corporate messaging and public relations, with glowing praise for her communication skills and strategic thinking. A reference from a billionaire CEO. That alone might be worth more than the $50,000 in the long run. Margaret showed me out an hour later, the designer clothes packed in garment bags, the letter and contract documents in my purse. A different Mercedes took me back to Brooklyn, and I watched the city transform as we drove, from gleaming Tribeca to gritty industrial areas to my neighborhood with its bodega and street art. The driver helped me with the bags, looking slightly confused about why he was dropping someone at this address. I thanked him and climbed the 3 flights to my apartment. Sarah was making coffee in her tiny kitchen when I walked in with armloads of designer garment bags. Holy shit, she said. What kind of catering job was this? The kind where they let you keep the uniform, I said, which was technically true. Maya, those are Chanel. I saw the tags. They're samples. Irregular sizing. I got lucky. She studied me suspiciously but didn't push. Well, did you make enough to quit the grocery store? I checked my phone. There it was, a notification from my bank about an incoming wire transfer. $50,000. The number looked surreal on the screen. Yeah, I said, my voice shaky. I made enough. The next 2 weeks were surreal. I gave notice at both jobs, claiming a freelance opportunity had come through, not entirely false, thanks to Alexander's reference letter. I paid off half my student loans in one payment, watching the balance drop with a satisfaction that felt almost physical. With the reference letter, I started applying to journalism positions I'd previously thought were out of reach. Corporate communications, content strategy, even a few editorial roles. The Whitmore Industries letterhead opened doors that had been firmly closed before. I tried not to think about Alexander, about the way he'd held my hand in the car, about his passion when discussing the solar technology, about that moment in the penthouse when he'd said he'd want someone like me if he were actually looking for a wife. It was over. A transaction completed successfully. I'd moved on. Except I hadn't. Not really. I kept the burgundy dress hanging in my closet instead of selling it. I reread his notes sometimes late at night. And when I saw stories about Whitmore Industries in the news, announcing the Singapore partnership, breaking ground on a new manufacturing facility, I felt a strange mix of pride and loss. I'd helped make that happen. In my own small, deceptive way, I'd contributed to something that would actually change lives. 3 weeks after our fake wedding day, I got a job offer. Senior content strategist at a tech nonprofit working on digital literacy in underserved communities. It wasn't the investigative journalism I dreamed of, but it was meaningful work, good pay, and they'd been impressed by the Whitmore Industries reference. I accepted immediately. Sarah took me out to celebrate, and I let myself relax for the first time in years. My life was finally moving forward. The girl who served coffee was becoming someone who told stories that mattered. I should have been happy. And I was. Mostly. The unexpected. I'd been at my new job for 2 months when it happened. I was leaving the office on a Friday evening, mentally planning my weekend, when a familiar black Mercedes pulled up beside me. The window rolled down. Alexander Whitmore looked out at me, and my heart did that complicated thing it had no business doing. Hello, Maya. Alexander. I tried to keep my voice steady. What are you doing here? I need to talk to you. Can you get in? Every rational part of my brain screamed that this was a bad idea. We'd had our transaction, our clean ending. But I got in the car anyway. I've been following your career, he said as the driver pulled away from the curb. Congratulations on the new position. Thank you. The reference letter helped. You helped yourself. I just opened a door. You walked through it. Silence stretched between us. I studied his profile in the fading light. He looked tired, the lines around his eyes deeper than I remembered. Why are you here, Alexander? The Tans are coming to New York next month. They want to have dinner with us. My stomach dropped. What? They're opening a regional office here. They want to celebrate with their favorite couple. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration I'd never seen from him. I told them you were traveling for work. That bought me time, but you need me to play the part again. I know it's asking a lot. How much? The words came out harsher than I'd intended. He flinched. This isn't about money. Everything with you is about money. That's how this works, remember? I play a role. You pay me for it. Maya. How much, Alexander? He named a figure double what he paid before. $100,000 for a single dinner. I laughed, the sound bitter in the unclosed space. You must be desperate. I am, he admitted quietly. But not in the way you think. Then explain it to me. The car pulled up to a curb in Central Park. Alexander nodded to the driver, and we got out. The early evening air was crisp. Autumn leaves scattered across the paths. We walked in silence for a minute before he spoke. After our arrangement, I couldn't stop thinking about it. About you. The way you saw the work, the human impact, not just the business potential. The way you challenged me. The way you looked at me like I was just a person, not a means to an end. I was literally using you as a means to an end. For money you desperately needed. I was using you for social performance. Neither of us was blameless. He stopped walking and turned to face me. But somewhere in that transaction, something real happened. At least for me. My heart was racing. Don't do this. I hired investigators after you left. Not to dig into your life. I swear I wouldn't violate your privacy like that. But to find out if you'd mentioned our arrangement to anyone. To make sure the NDA was holding. It is. I haven't told anyone. I know. Because you have integrity, even when no one's watching. Do you know how rare that is? I crossed my arms, defensive. What do you want from me, Alexander? I want to hire you again for the dinner with the Tans. But I also want to be honest with you. I've thought about you every day for the past 2 months. I've started typing messages to you 100 times and deleted them all. I've driven past your apartment building twice, which I realize sounds stalker-ish, and I apologize. Very stalker-ish. I know. But Maya, that day we spent together, pretending to be married, playing those roles, it was the most genuine I've felt in years. And I can't stop wondering if you felt even a fraction of the same thing. I wanted to lie. To say no. It was just a job. He was just a client. But I'd already done enough lying. Yes, I whispered. I felt it too. So let's do this dinner. Let me pay you the 100,000. You've earned it. And I know you can use it. But after, let me take you to dinner for real. No performance, no investors, no contract. Just us. That's a terrible idea. Why? Because we're from different worlds, Alexander. You have a penthouse in Tribeca, and I have a room in Bushwick. You went to Harvard, and I'm drowning in student debt from a state school. You drink scotch that costs more than my rent, and I buy wine from the bodega. We don't make sense. My parents didn't make sense either. My mother grew up in a trailer park in Alabama. My father was old money from Boston. Everyone said it wouldn't work, but they chose each other anyway, and they built a partnership that lasted 40 years until he died. That's different. How? Because they actually loved each other. What we have is, I don't even know what to call it. Then let's find out. One dinner. Real conversation, real feelings. If at the end of it you still think we don't make sense, I'll respect that. I'll pay you for the Tan's dinner, and I'll never bother you again. I looked up at him, at this complicated, frustrating, surprising man who'd somehow gotten under my skin in 12 hours. One dinner, I agreed. But I'm not taking your money for it. If we're doing this for real, it needs to actually be real. He smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile I'd never seen before. Deal. The real thing. The Tan's dinner was both easier and harder the second time. Easier because I knew the story, knew the patterns, knew how to play the role. Harder because sitting next to Alexander, holding his hand, feeling his arm around my waist, all of it meant something now. Every touch was charged with possibility. Every smile held questions. When he looked at me across the table, I wondered if he was seeing Maya the fake wife or Maya the real woman he wanted to know. Mrs. Tan noticed the difference. You two seem even more in love than before, she commented during dessert. Marriage clearly agrees with you. We've learned a lot about each other, I said carefully. That, at least, was true. After the Tans left, Alexander and I stood on the street corner, the city buzzing around us. Tomorrow night? He asked. For our real dinner? Tomorrow night, I confirmed. He didn't try to kiss me, didn't push for more than we'd agreed to. Just squeezed my hand once and got back in his car. I took the subway home, clutching my purse where a check for $100,000 sat folded. It felt different this time, not like salvation, but like a complication. Our real first date was at a tiny Italian restaurant in the West Village, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles. Nothing fancy, nothing performed. Just two people trying to figure out if the connection they'd felt was real. I Googled romantic restaurants normal people can afford, Alexander admitted. This came up a lot. I laughed. You really are terrible at normal, aren't you? Catastrophically terrible. But I'm trying. We talked for hours. Real things this time. His relationship with his sister, my complicated feelings about my family's expectations, his father's death 3 years ago, my struggles with imposter syndrome in my new job. Do you ever feel like you're just pretending to know what you're doing? I asked. Every single day, he admitted. Running a $1 billion company at 32? I'm terrified constantly. But I learned something from our arrangement. Sometimes you have to act like you belong until you actually do. That's either brilliant or deeply concerning. Probably both. When he walked me home, I invited him up for coffee. Sarah was out, and my room suddenly felt impossibly small with him standing in it. This is your space, he said, looking around at my books, my journalism awards from college, the photos of my family on the wall. It's not much. It's you. That makes it perfect. And then he kissed me. It wasn't like the staged touches from our fake marriage. This was real, tender and questioning, his hand cupping my face like I was something precious. I kissed him back, letting myself fall into the truth of it. When we broke apart, I was breathless. Tell me this isn't crazy, I whispered. It's absolutely crazy, he said. But some of the best things are. 6 months later, Merging our lives was messy and complicated and nothing like a fairy tale. Alexander had to learn that he couldn't solve every problem by throwing money at it. I had to learn that accepting help wasn't the same as losing independence. We fought about stupid things: whose apartment to stay at, whether I let him pay off the rest of my student loans, I wouldn't, how much time he should spend working, less according to me, more according to his board. But we also laughed more than I'd laughed in years. He introduced me to opera and sailing and restaurants where meals cost more than my first car. I introduced him to dive bars and street food and the concept of sleeping in on weekends. His sister Caroline flew in from London to meet me and declared me exactly what that workaholic robot needs before hugging me tightly. My parents were skeptical at first, suspicious of the wealthy white man dating their daughter. But Alexander won them over by speaking passable Mandarin and asking detailed questions about my mother's piano teaching methods. The Tans visited twice more, and each time it got easier to not feel like we were lying. Because we weren't anymore. The performance had become the reality. I never told anyone about our original arrangement. That secret stayed locked between us, a strange foundation for something real. The best part: working together on the solar initiative. Alexander put me in charge of the company's storytelling, documenting the human impact of the technology, writing about the villages and schools and clinics that got power for the first time. I finally got to be the journalist I dreamed of being, just not in the way I'd imagined. 2 years later, the actual wedding was nothing like the fictional one we'd invented. No Hampton estate, no intimate ceremony. Instead, we got married at the courthouse on a Tuesday afternoon, with just Caroline and my brother Daniel as witnesses. Mrs. Tan would have been horrified by the lack of pageantry, but it was perfect for us. That night, lying in bed in the penthouse that had gradually become our home rather than just his, Alexander traced patterns on my shoulder. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. How we started. I thought about it honestly. No. We were both doing what we needed to do at the time. It just led somewhere neither of us expected. I regret not paying you more for that first day. I smacked his arm lightly. Don't ruin the moment with talk about money. I'm serious. You changed my entire life for $50,000. That's the bargain of the century. You changed mine too. And you paid me $150,000 total, plus a job, plus a reference letter that launched my career. I think we're even. He pulled me closer. I became a rich man's wife for a day, I said, echoing the title of a story I'd never write. Turns out, a day was just the beginning. And the rich man became better for it, he added. We fell asleep tangled together. Two people who'd started with a transaction and built something real from the fiction. Sometimes the best love stories begin with a contract, a performance, and $50,000. Sometimes they start with a lie that becomes the truth you needed all along. And sometimes, when you pretend to be someone's wife for a day, you end up becoming exactly that, just in ways neither of you could have scripted. Tishi end.